first Scions of November 2024. This is the 246th edition. That's also the name of a very good restaurant in Decatur, Georgia that I have still not gone to, but really want to go to. Anyways, my name is Jack Purdy. I'm here with Jake Grant. I also have one not newbie. Will, you were on this podcast once, back when things were much more harrowing with football. And then we got our main basketball guy, Robert Pensa, finally here. I know this is your first since I've been doing this podcast, but
This is my first.
oh my goodness. Well, okay.
Happy to
This
join you
we're
guys.
not well, you are not allowed to not return, basically, is the rule here now. Um, we're here to talk men's basketball. Season starts this week. I always forget that men's basketball is starting until it happens the week of, and that's this week. I'm so glad football had a week off so I can actually think about this team and what we have, because otherwise I was totally just oblivious to it. Uh, let's just start at the top. Last year was bad in some ways and kind of miraculous in other ways. It felt very Georgia Techy with how much variance there was. We knew it was going to be a weird in between season. Rob, I'll start with you and just like, where were you even thinking going into last year, and then how were you feeling coming out of last year once we had three wildly good wins and many inexplicable losses all at the same time?
Yeah, so I mean, going into last year, I felt optimistic about the coaching hire. Damon had good success in his previous stops at Pacific, and then obviously he was highly regarded in NBA circles coming from the Celtics. So I felt like it was potentially a good hire. He's going to have good X's and O's, and then obviously being a former NBA star, he's going to be able to recruit Atlanta. So I knew year one, you're not going to get obviously phenomenal results right out the gate, most likely. We didn't bring in any amazing recruits. I mean, Ndongo was, I think he was a 4-star, but he wasn't anybody that was gonna, be a top 10 recruit or anything like that. So the season kind of played out what I would have expected. We had some very good games, like you said. We had the win over Duke, the win over North Carolina, even the win over Clemson, who ended up being a pretty good tournament team. But then there was some very bad losses along the way. The UMass Lowell loss, the Louisville loss, who was obviously
Mm-hmm.
dreadful last season. But you're going to get that with a new coach, a fairly young team. So it kind of was about as expected, I'd say.
Well, we went to so many Pastner games together because that's just when we were in school. It was weird to go to just not Pastner basketball games, considering that's all we ever did. But I, my feeling coming out was just like, okay, there's something here that at least can be built on by the time. And I don't think we ever truly, we kind of got to that point with Pastner because we actually made the tournament. Moses and Jose were great, but it's like, okay, finally we're in a phase that was clear that Josh wasn't all the way getting to quite yet. So, uh, before Jake goes, where did you land after last year too?
Yeah, I mean I'm in the same boat. Obviously, like with Pastner, right? He was supposed to be like our player development coach situation, right? With like, how he turned Alvarado and Wright, who were like low, like what 2-star recruits, both of them, something like that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and then players stopped developing, and so it was time to make a change. Obviously, like what Rob said, we've got a guy who at least has like a name that can recruit. And I mean, recruiting results, early returns, pretty solid. We're getting a couple 4-stars. Cannot complain about that, especially in a competitive. I mean, everywhere's competitive for like the blue bloods. You can recruit from all 50 states and abroad, but been fun to see good guys come in and with a team with a lot of our better players being so young, just
Mm-hmm.
kind of letting them start to work out, identity as a team, work out, what the strategy is going to be, what type of like program are we going to be, and just kind of and let Stoudemire adjust to the college game. Coming from the NBA to the college game is definitely a big change. X's and O's are X's and O's, but then the added aspect of recruiting and just the uncertainty of college ball. Getting him have a year to just like get a feel for that was kind of all I was hoping for out of last season. So
I was really hoping Damon leaving the Celtics would mean they wouldn't win the championship. It'd be why they couldn't win, but then they went up and were amazing. So that didn't end up happening because Joe Maz actually good coach. Jake, I know you heard something. You probably have 8 paragraphs ready to go just from what you've heard just now.
Yeah, I thought about taking a left turn down the Pastner defense, and then I thought about the Pastner, the flaws, but we're way past that. He's enjoying his best life on television. I think kind of just talking through the initial Damon year, the saga, right? There was some carryovers from Josh's final year, all that to be said. The thing that I keep landing on is we went 18 and 15 in Passner's last year and 18 and 14 last year
Mhm.
in Damon's first. I'm not trying to say that it should be way better. He's a new coach or, oh no, like sound the alarms. Nothing has changed. But the way we got to those 18 wins was some of the most dramatic mood
Mhm.
shift swings. And I think that encapsulates kind of the current state of modern college basketball. It's teams that have a lot of variance year to year. Ken Pomeroy put out an interesting column about a week or two ago just about the percent of returning minutes and kind of how that's correlated with
Mhm.
preseason and postseason results. I think it's something that's still working its way out in the system, and I'll kind of leave it a little bit open-ended. All to say, I'm hopeful for more stability this year. I think with a young core, Ndongo was mentioned, Nate George at point guard. A young core last year. Hopefully, that experience coming back helps them. I will note that the I believe the only player left on the roster from 2 years ago is Lance Terry, who redshirted last year after injury. So, it's a high variance sport. It's a sport with a lot of turnover. It's certainly something we saw between Josh's last year and Damon's first. And I mean, I think it played out with having a young, relatively new to gel with each other lineup and kind of what Rob said about some of those games that we saw with both the wins and the
Yeah,
losses. So
that makes
that's where
sense.
I'm
That
at
makes
at
sense.
least.
Yeah, the college basketball is just not consistent anymore unless you just happen to be UConn, who never loses any guys, and can just keep teams together. Or yeah,
Or
especially
gals.
them. Yeah, that's true. Um, no, I think that's a good point. Is like the fact that we kept like there's no like the Dongo probably I imagine was offered something to go play somewhere else. Like there's no like there's got to be a smart team that thought about like okay, we see this guy, he's clearly good NBA wise. His stat I forgot what this who was it. Demetra put out something a couple weeks ago about his combo of stats for a center in their first year. Every other guy that had his stat combo became an NBA guy. Like they all got drafted. He's the 15th guy. I forgot what the combo was. I'll find it on his Twitter. But it's like he is tracking that way. Stoudemire at press conferences made a note multiple times like this dude looks like an NBA guy right now, and Damon would know. He literally came from coaching Jason Tatum and Jason and Jalen Brown, uh, and he put us in games that we needed to. I mean, I say needed to win. We need to win them all, but yeah, I think your point there is good in terms of between Nate George, Baye Kawasi Reeves too, and having Terry back. Four guys that can play all together is good for college basketball right now, who at least have practiced together. Lance didn't play many games
Yeah.
last year, but at least he practiced with them all. He's not unfamiliar with these guys. So, uh, Rob, does that? I mean, just knowing who we have returning of the things that give you hope this year, is that the main thing that gives you hope this year versus any other factors we may have going into the year?
Yeah, I think so. And Jack, I pulled up that tweet you were talking about. He's the 16th ACC freshman in the last 20 years to average 12 points per game and 8 rebounds per game.
There you go. Okay,
All of them played in the NBA, and 12 of them became first round picks.
look at
So
that.
pretty
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I mean, having a player like that, hopefully taking another step forward. And I mean, I've seen a lot of hype around Nate George also to be a breakout star in the ACC. I think we
Hmm.
all saw
Mhm.
it last year. I mean, even more than Ndongo, he was probably more streaky. He had a lot of games with 0 points, 2 points, 5 points, but then he had 18, 20. So you saw the potential, just needed a
Yeah.
little bit more consistency.
Right.
And if those two guys can take a big step forward in their second season here with some of the guys that they brought in the offseason, the freshmen, and then some of the transfers like JV McCollum, I think there's a lot of potential.
But
I'm going to
yeah,
bounce off the JV and McCullum mention real quick, just because I don't want to forget to say this. Um, I felt like it was positive that I recognized his name before we signed him, if that makes sense. Like that feels like obviously, Colorado's a pretty good team last year. Getting Luke O'Brien is good, but like it is there something something to be said of, oh, it's a name brand transfer, if you will, or I can also see the logic of, okay, like why didn't it pan out at Oklahoma type of deal. At least to me, Javian's the name that gets me the most. Like, oh,
I mean,
nice
Yeah,
he was definitely
kind of
one of the
reaction.
top transfers on the whole market too. I mean, going from 3-star in high school, just solid player there, but then like jumping up to being like a 4-star level transfer, which I don't know how much the stars mean there, but like he still
Yeah.
was, even if it's you're unsure, like getting one of the better transfers in the market is never a bad thing either for the program or as a sign of the program.
Yeah, I think
yeah. I mean,
it's
I watched lots of tape on him, and he, the stats were good. They weren't great. At 13.3 points per game is pretty good in college basketball. But you watch, I mean, obviously those are cherry picked highlights, but the things he can do,
Yeah.
he can shoot the ball. He has a great mid range jumper. He's extremely explosive and can get to the rim. And I think with Ndongo, it's going to be a phenomenal pick and roll pairing between the two of them because if you leave him open, he's actually a much better shooter off the dribble than he is catch and shoot. So you cannot leave him coming off that pick and roll. But if you go to him, then he's going to be able to get it to Ndongo all day.
that'll be big because we've
Good.
got guys who can shoot on this team. I think obviously Ndongo is going to be good on the inside, but Nate's could get some stuff up. Lance should be able to shoot. I assume he's gotten somewhat better in the last year and whatnot. Uh, but we'll see what Duncan Powell's got. I mean, I was looking back at our roster last year and I was like, oh right, we don't have Miles Kelly anymore. He's not here. Forgot about that. He transferred. Debo Coleman, Rebo, not going to have that anymore this year. Amari Abram, we know wasn't probably going to stick around
Shout out Kyle
much of
Sturdivant.
Oh yeah, that's right. We're not gonna have the 10th year of Kyle
Uh,
Sturdivant on campus. Oh
Who
man,
10
somehow would
years,
go
10
on
years, 10 starts.
who came
that's
as a
right. That's
transfer
yeah,
right.
too,
That's
by the
right.
way.
That's
he would
amazing.
somehow go on crazy streaks and knock down threes he definitely should not be knocking down.
It was insane. It was insane. All right,
He
that'll
was he
be
was our best 3-point shooter last year. I mean, shout out it's 32 games, no starts, but I mean, he was a very good scoring burst off the
six
bench.
man.
So
A perfect six man.
To my continued incredulousness, Will.
Well, I mean, looking at just who we brought in transfer wise to kind of shift to the new guys, all of them are, I mean, obviously they're all older, but to kind of reinforce what you're saying, like this is between, if you think of Ndongo and George as just the young core of this group, like this is the team that you pivot around and build around. All these transfers are older guys, and they're all either ideally the backup to George and Ndongo or the people to build around them with between Ryan Batembo, Jaden Mustaf's a freshman, sorry. But yeah, McCollum, Luke O'Brien, Duncan Powell as well. It's like they're working around. They're very clearly building around this kind of. And Stoudemire said this. He's built this team like an NBA team. Like he's treating it in the same kind of way, where like you have a salary cap. You know how much NAL you got to do. You build it as you've got your you've got your main people, and then you go from there and you build around that instead of and somewhat recruiting underneath. And we're basically using Overtime Elite as our AAA team at the same time while doing all this, which is kind of incredible. I forgot who was the guy that we sent back for a year to not come this year. There was somebody we sent back.
I'm blanking.
You've been your contract's been reassigned
it was
to
basically something
AAA.
like that. But
let him play in a
nonetheless,
two-way.
I know, kind of. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of already there. But there's two guys from Overtime Elite, and Jaden Mustaf and Darian Sutton. But let's look at the transfers though. Ryan Matumbo from Georgetown, Duncan Powell from Sac State, JV McCollum we've mentioned from Oklahoma, and Luke O'Brien from Colorado. Hey, y'all take this as you want. I'll start with you, Will. But what was like okay, this is good that we've got this guy clearly. I guess we kind of said that with Javian, but anything
Yeah,
else
I
you got?
mean, yeah, McCollum's the easy one because he's like the one who has played at a high level in college before. I'm personally like I'm excited about Matumbo. Not like he doesn't really put up particularly notable stats like when he was at Georgetown, but I mean, he was a 4-star out of high school. His dad, Rip Dikembe. My mom met him in a grocery store one time. Um,
Nice.
and but I mean, he's at the end of the day, he's 7'2", and
Oh
like,
God.
yeah, he's 7'2". He's 255. Like he's not slight either. Like he's a large man. I mean, we were able to have some success with James Banks, who just was a like really large body. You can go the other way and talk about Saba Gigabaria. a few years ago who did not pan out, although he was all right when he went over to the West Coast. But I mean,
Mhm.
he's just large, right? And especially since we have not a ton of proven forwards. Obviously, Ndongo is like maybe our best player, but still a sophomore and still, very much like profiling as a four. And I mean, just having a center who is just large enough to just like kind of by virtue of his size be
Mhm.
impacting what can happen in the paint. um that's going to be helpful. We got gashed last year, gave up like 75 points a game, and I think it'll be helpful just to like have a guy who we can who we can have just get in the way and
Right, right.
feed him, like we were talking with the pick and roll action. I'm not entirely sure how he is as like a lob threat or anything like that, but large and in charge is definitely a helpful place to be. I like too. I mean, we've got we have size, right, from all of our, besides McCollum, from all of our transfers. This is, we've only got one 7-footer on the roster, but it's not like I think we have a good combination of like size and athleticism coming into the program. So you know, excited. I think for me, the biggest ones are definitely going to be, McCollum's an easy sell, but I don't know. I'm hopeful about Mutombo and just you know again having a huge dude who can make
Yeah.
stuff happen.
Yeah, no, I agree. That'll be really fun. I remember watching games last year and not being able to tell if I was watching Georgia Tech or the Hawks, just with how defensive stuff went down. It was the exact same experience both in both arenas, no matter what.
I feel like we've had a specific dearth of having just big dudes, even back to like when Moses was the center, to the Saba piece and things like that. Like just the depth of, you know, guys in the paint, guys down low. I don't know. You can have great guards
Right.
till the crows come home, but if you don't have somebody to give your big man a spell or something like that, then that's tough.
Yeah.
Tough place to be. So hopefully, between Dorian and Ryan,
Rob, I'll
something
shift
pencils out there.
slightly same question, but just slightly different in terms of like what does the best version of this team look like now, from what we can tell with these guys? Because obviously, if the talent wise, we're in a better spot, I would say, than we were last year. Obviously, freshman recruiting went very, very well and has been getting better with a couple of 4 stars between what Onyecheckwa. Yes, I said it right. Woohoo! Uh, and then Sutton and Mustaff, which have been big gets. So I mean, like right now, if you're to be like, okay, this is a attainable good goal for this group to get, what does that look like for you right now?
I think it's going to be the role players and how they fit in. I mean, we know, or we're expecting, at least I should say, a large jump from Ndongo, Nate George, McCollum. Those are going to be your star players all season. But is it going to be just those three guys, and they're going to have to carry everything, or are the transfers and the freshmen going to come in and they're going to be able to make a difference and round this team out? And that's really going to be what takes us to the next level, or it's just these three guys fighting for their lives, and when they're off the floor we look like a mess, and
Yeah,
you know so
yeah,
that's where I think it is. And I want to touch on Mutombo too, because I think his career is very interesting, and he really could be a diamond in the rough here, because he was a highly rated recruit coming out of high school. He had a pretty decent freshman season at Georgetown, played in 27 games. He was averaging double digit minutes, like 5 or 6 points a game and 3 or 4 rebounds. And in the last 2 seasons, he basically just saw his minutes disappear. And I'm not can't say I really followed his career too closely, but maybe that change of scenery really revives him. The raw talent is clearly there at 7'2", and if you watch his tape, he has pretty good touch. He's got a nice little hook shot around the rim, so he could really surprise some people, I think.
Mutombo doing well in Atlanta sounds amazing. No matter which Mutombo it is. Um, to dig in, oh, just to mention the other guys that are on this team, Marco San Miguel still on the team, Emmer Nichols still on the team as well, and then there's Dylan Thompson, who is one of the freshmen, who was yeah, to mention that to Will's point on size, 6'7". We got our new guys, 6'7", 6'8", 6'11", 7'2", as we mentioned, Ndongo 6'9", Sutton 6'8", Luke O'Brien 6'8", and then Javian 6'2". So yeah, the not getting smaller tends to be a good sign, and we will need that size once we get into ACC play for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And
What
and the other two transfers, I mean, Luke O'Brien and Duncan Powell, both guys are phenomenal rebounders.
good? Yeah,
O'Brien for a wing
good.
player, he's 6'8", so he's pretty big. and he averaged like 5 rebounds a game over the last 2 seasons. And then Powell was one of the top offensive rebounders in the entire country. So those guys are going to, that size is going to be useful.
That'd be good. Yeah, I mean, it's offensive rebound. I don't remember if offensive rebounding was big for us, but I don't think it was that big considering how most of our games went down, and just size wise, how we were not advantaged for the most part. So that's good to know. To quickly hit on the scheduling format before we get into like actual like season thoughts. With the addition of Cal, Stanford, and SMU, this is still a 20-game season. They have only announced the format for this season and next season, which is we have 3 home and aways for both years. That is with Notre Dame, Clemson, and Boston College. Every other team we will play at home or at away once in the next 2 seasons. That is how we're going to get to everybody. Women's basketball is different in that you only have one team that's like that, and for us that is Clemson. So non-con wise, our ACC SEC challenge team is Oklahoma, which is convenient because J.V. McCollum literally just came from Oklahoma. That's where he transferred from. So we'll get the inside scoop there from him, hopefully. We play seemingly every directional school on the planet at McCamish. I believe this is the most home games we've had in a number of years. I forgot what the exact number was, but it's your season ticket's going to get your bang for your buck this year, even if it is teams like, I mean, in terms of, well,
bang for your buck. As a season ticket holder, I'm
in terms
kind
of,
of
you get a lot of games. You're getting a lot more games
displeased.
for a similar price. That's what you're getting.
Jack, quantity versus quality. I'd rather see us play a Bradley or a
All right, all right.
UAB or a decent mid-major
does
type
do
school
the
than
North Florida Ospreys not give you enough interest? No. Okay, cool.
no, nor do the West Georgia whomevers that we play on
Well, that
Wednesday
is
like to
nights to open
see
the
I like to see
season.
big
But
number in win column. So I mean,
that is fair. That is
not to be
fair.
simplistic, but
Let's
that
not mark
I
those
know
as wins
I'm not
already.
counting my chickens before they hatch. I'm not counting my chickens before they hatch, but it'll be nice to see numbers in win column.
That would be
So
fun. It'll be fun. We play Georgia at home this year. That is next Friday. So within 2 weeks of us recording this, we finished the Cincinnati home and home with them here this year, and then a fun. I hope this is a fun game. I know we're getting Will out there. We play Northwestern in the Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee. So not a road. So like not a true road game, but also like not exactly a not home game for Northwestern all at the same time. So interesting little spot there. Uh, are there any schedule takes at all? Does anyone care? I mean, we mentioned how the non-con's not amazing. Jake, I know you're gonna have your hand up. This makes sense.
This is one of my favorite things to talk about is schedules and how those work out. Notre Dame, Clemson, Boston College. I think that is a really tight group of 3 schools to get the home and homes with. Boston College, I think those are winnable games. Notre Dame will win by 1, or they'll win by 1, or will win by
Mm-hmm.
2, or they'll win by 2. There you go. It can't end at a tie, even though it seems like they try to every time we play them there. And then Clemson, pretty high quality there. So I think in terms of how that kind of just you squint and look at combinations of 3. Of course, you got the local home and home there, and 2 schools that I think Tech stands pretty decent chances of going up against and doing something interesting. So that's the thing that jumps off the page at me. So
And the only thing I've noticed is that this year the ACC tournament is not in Greensboro. It is in Charlotte this year, as part of how they're rotating the conference championships around Greensboro and Charlotte for men's basketball through 2029. So just different building, hopefully better results from last year as well, and a better seed. Also, oh yes, remind me if I'm wrong. Not every team is going to make the conference tournament this year with 18 teams. They're just keeping the tournament about the same size, and then so if we have to play our way in, basically, we don't just get to show up and get a game this year.
No more Tuesday in Greensboro.
I'm fine. I'm fine with that. I'm fine.
darn.
I'm fine with that as long as we're the higher seed and don't have to play on Tuesday. So, okay, Jake, I know you have a bit here to get us into our okay. How do we really feel about this team and what this year could be?
Yes. My bit is called the Rothstein-o-meter. In past years, he has been down on Georgia Tech. That usually incites some sort of course, we're going to be better from me. He doesn't know anything about what we're doing. And it appears that John Rothstein has picked Georgia Tech as like his ACC sleeper team. That is spooky to me, but it seems positive. Gents, any thoughts? Are we going to set the Rothstein-meter high and match his vibes, or what are we thinking in terms of that conference
Well,
picture?
first off, I think any Rothstein take is a good take. And I agree, he has been showing us a lot of love on Twitter, a lot more than normal. So that's never a bad thing. I'm cautiously optimistic about the season. I think that the ACC is going to be really close once you get after, Duke and North Carolina, which are going to be the clear top two teams. And then, um, after that, I think 3 through 15 will probably be really close. And then, there'll be a couple bottom feeders. But I think that the non-conference schedule sets up nicely, as we previously discussed. I think we get Georgia early, fairly early. I think they could be a sneaky team this year. They brought in a lot of talent, but they're going to be young and they might need some time to gel. So getting them early on in the season is good. And then after that, the non-conference schedule is fairly winnable. Cincinnati, hopefully we fare a lot better than we did last year. Wipe that game from our memories.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, I think that's cautious optimism is where I'd stand.
Well, I think that's a step up from where we were last year, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, last year was like a let's see if we can have some fun. A couple of classic Georgia Tech upsets and a couple of classic Georgia Tech being upset um, by the likes of powerhouse UMass Lowell. But we the ACC has become, there's a lot more parity. I mean, in all of college basketball, of course, but like the ACC, formerly like undisputed, maybe not undisputed, but like basically like every year in the conversation for the best conference in college basketball. And with especially with you've got Bennett retiring, and I mean all the change in Chapel Hill and Durham. It's even though you've got the best of the best, are still usually the top few seeds. There's just a lot more up for grabs. Plus, I mean, it really does help that we seem to just have a handful of just random upsets I mean, in every sport, of course, but like basketball, it's we continue to have a lot of fun in Chapel Hill. And I mean, there was one point we were receiving votes last year after knocking off Mississippi State
That's right. Yeah,
and
yeah.
Duke in back-to-back games, and they
What a
decided
week
to
that
overlook
was.
the UMass Lowell
It's a great week.
loss right before that. And then I believe immediately after that we proceeded to get dog walked in Cincinnati. So that is in fact the way it goes. But no, I mean, definitely a step forward seems likely to me, with like we've talked about all the new talent, and some of the very strong returning talent, and just the newfound parity in the conference.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah. I think that my like kind of default setting is cautious optimism. I don't know what it is about college basketball, but I want to believe so bad. I don't know what it is more than any other like college sport. And we talk about all 17 on this podcast and the club sports too. But when it comes to hoops, it's like a need to to have the hope going into it. Brings out my inner Cubs fan there.
Well,
I
we
think
found
that's
it.
how I'd say it. That being said, and I was at home in Chicago for both the Cincinnati game and the UGA game on different trips. Um, and I remember exactly where I was for both of those. And just the like, I don't know, it felt like we just didn't have it. But you sandwich in there the Duke game, and that was an emotional high. Yeah, the UNC game, that was an emotional high as well. I think I'll be a lot more confident in how I feel about how I'm setting my expectations when we get to, the Cincinnati and the UGA games. I think getting a couple lines in the sand, those are going to tell us a lot about this team. And Robbie noted that they, of course, turned over a lot at UGA, but even in I think the Georgia Tech fan, um, psyche, that game punches above its weight, even in a sport like basketball, where maybe, not quite the same as football or baseball or something like that. But I don't know. I want to have that cautious optimism, and I'll tell you that I'll be feeling a lot more confident or informed, I guess, even
Sure.
is the way I'd put that after those two
Sounds
games,
good.
I think.
Sounds good.
So,
Does anyone even dare put a win total in the universe? You don't have to, but if you want to, the floor is open to give an actual number of wins this team gets to by the time the season is over, or what round of what maybe of said whatever tournament of the multiple possibilities of tournaments we have to get into when it's all done.
Oh, I'd be lying if I didn't say I was already playing with these numbers in my head before this. And that number I came to was 19 wins. So we'll
Okay.
see.
Okay.
That should put us, I think, somewhat near the bubble. Guess it kind of depends how those 19 wins happen, but that's where I'll put it for now. After non-conference play, we'll see if that number should go up or go down, but that's where we'll start.
I was in the same wheelhouse of like 18 to 20. I think we could be a fun, I don't know, I think a fun little NIT run, reminiscent of when we went all the way until, was it Bowl that cooked us in the final like several years ago, or
No, it
did we
was
play
I
TCU?
think it was Taco Fall, wasn't it?
Yes,
Oh.
Taco Fall.
Yep.
Hmm.
Just
TCU.
Yep.
absolutely, yeah, that was
Yeah.
not a fun one, but it was fun to be in the finals of the second biggest you know college basketball postseason tournament. So um, even if it's a slightly distant second, but no, I think that we will can get some buzz. I mean, especially if we like we're talking about, if Georgia and Cincinnati games go well, then that's a nice runway into the start of conference play with it to give us some confidence. And I mean, if we do really cook in non-con, then uh, we would only have to do slightly better than last year's ACC record to be right around that 20 win threshold.
I like that frame of mind because I think that is very, very doable. I think that should have been even doable last year as well. I was looking at the top of the schedule. We start with 7 straight games at home: West Georgia, North Florida, Texas Southern, Georgia, Cincinnati, Charleston Southern, Central Arkansas. Half these schools I learned were schools in the last 2 weeks. Before we get to Oklahoma and North Carolina and Northwestern all in a row. Yeah, hopefully you win all 7 of these games. But nonetheless, you have got a good, safe way to figure out who you are early, and still get some challenges in there. So I think that's a good approach. Jake, any last notes before we wrap up here?
Mm, yeah, I think that as ever, my goal is to be cautiously optimistic. I think there's a lot of reasons to be. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it shakes out. I feel like that's super non-committal, which I not which I feel is unusual for me. But
That's
you know,
that's better than me. I
that's
go to
why they
these
play the
games and I
games.
still have
So,
no idea how good this team is, despite the fact I watched too much of this. So, anyways, y'all, thanks for hanging out. I assume we'll be fighting over fighting at Notre Dame for no good reason again. Clemson will be weird, and then we'll lose somewhat terribly to someone who is also terrible. So that's just tis our life. I think we'll be fine. It'll be nonetheless. I with y'all. I have the hope. Damon's doing things right. It seems like so far. So I'm really looking forward to how this goes down. So thanks y'all for hanging out. Rob has been helping us with our preview of the season on the website at fromtherumbleseat.com, so you can read his stuff there. Will is going to at least write one recap this year because that was part of his terms for coming on this podcast. And hopefully we'll
I'll
see
be
him write.
filling in at worst.
Okay, there you go. Perfect, perfect. We'll have him with some more stuff. So thanks, y'all. Jake, let's hear from section 103.
yeah. As always, this podcast is brought to you by Section 103. Section 103 is the best place to find Georgia Tech apparel. Section 103 will provide you with all of your gold tech logo, word mark, all that good stuff their needs. Their NIL shirts support the players. That said, not a lot of new releases lately, but as ever, you can find free shipping on orders over $80 every day. And keep an eye out on their Twitter for special promos. Keep an eye out on their site for new products and launches and releases as well. Support the guys over there as they support us and help to bring you this podcast each and every week. We thank them for their support. Go check them out. Code FTRS for 10 off. And that brings us to the rest of the show. Jack, back to you.
All right, coming back. Very nice of Rob and Will to hang out with us. I think that was the third time I've done a podcast in some form with Will, dating back to our technique days. So fun that he's with us now. Let's do a little bit of football. Obviously, this was our off week, a much needed off week, I think, based on how banged up we were at the old Virginia Tech. So nice to not have a football game to worry about, honestly, just for my own sanity. I assume, Jake, you felt the same. Just be like, okay, not this week.
Jack, you know me pretty well at this point. It's been a number of years, and you know that Georgia Tech sports, Atlanta, all that kind of just occupies all of my mind space all of the time, unless I'm like on the clock at work or I guess like really into a run or bike ride or something like that. And for those who may have tuned in, I've not been on the podcast in 2 weeks, three, I guess
No.
two recordings off, 3 weeks, just in general. And I know football season's short. It's 14, 15 weeks of 52, right? So you spend twice as much time thinking about it than you do, but just not thinking about those things and enjoying some travel and some rest. I I feel refreshed
It's
in a way
amazing,
that
isn't it?
like even like preseason I don't feel like this. So
Yeah.
yes, it was refreshing to have a bye for sure. And I also just got to watch other teams yesterday.
Yeah.
I the amount of times that I go into a game, it's hard to like watch or pay attention if you're
hmm
tailgating or eating or in a stadium or things like that. Like I don't know. I just watched some non Georgia Tech football and sat on the couch, did housework and stuff like
hmm
that. I can't complain about that at all.
It's we're old enough now to like enjoy life on our own
Mhm.
without the things without other programming. It's and we live in a great spot to do that kind of stuff. So I'm
Yeah.
with you. Doing chop and stuff and other stuff around Atlanta yesterday made for a very nice warm November day that should have been,
Yeah.
55 degrees, but it was 7, whatever. Okay. But so this week though, it is well, we are back in full swing, and I know for your tech career, homecoming week was the week, I'm guessing, for many a thing, considering you basically ran homecoming for at least what, 1 year, 2 years? I don't know how many years, but
I was in rec club for four homecomings. So 2021 was the most interesting, I'd say.
okay.
But it looks like we're getting, and not looks like, I know for a fact we are getting the noon treatment.
Yes,
And
yes.
having done a couple of noon homecomings, it's gonna be a busy day as ever. We've got people coming back in, and it's like, oh gosh, we gotta rustle ourselves up and get into town. Of course, it doesn't shift the mini five, which
No.
we'll note is always Friday afternoon. But if you're trying to get up there for, any of the rec parade type things, prepare for an early start.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be a lot. 2021 is one of my favorites because that's when I won a gold trophy for the Mini 500. So I put that up there
Nice.
as my favorite, as possibly my favorite one. I don't remember what happened in the football game though. I'm not gonna lie. Don't even know who he played. I guess it was Duke, based on historical trends, but I don't actually know.
2022 was Duke, so 2021. Oh gosh, this is bad. I should know this off the top of my head.
Yeah. Who cares?
Eh,
Um, anyways,
I'll know in
another
1 minute.
another big thing about homecoming this week. If you are here, especially if you are here Friday afternoon or midday, if you're going to be on campus, there is in fact at the CRC a drown proofing demonstration that will be occurring somewhere between the 12 and 2 time slot. They haven't said what time specifically, but if you sign up for homecoming, you can sign up for that, which you probably are going to need to have to do because the pool is usually buzz card entrance and everything, so they're going to have to do some arranging to get people down to the pool deck for normal. But nonetheless, um, if you're one of those people that may have taken drown proofing or have told your kids about drown proofing or are a current student who has been wondering what the hell is drown proofing, now is the time to find out what this thing was that we did 40 years ago for
And
approximately 40
I'm
years.
sad I can't make that. I've been
I
asking
know.
for that for years. But it sounds like a great idea. Also, for the record, 2021 was a very forgettable 26-17 loss to Virginia Tech on
Okay, well there you
homecoming.
go. That's why
So
I don't
I
remember.
don't feel bad that we didn't remember that game.
Yep, totally. I'm with you on that one. I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
But yes, I believe there'll be some of the men's swimmers are going to be the ones doing the actual demo, considering they are the least at risk to do this kind of thing as very highly
Yeah.
trained swimmers and very fast swimmers, as we will get to down the line here. So that'll be fun. I think it's an alumni association run thing, so I assume it'll be great. On the actual field itself, Zeke Biggers got invited to the Shrine Bowl, so that'll be a down the line thing. We don't have any updates on player health. We probably won't get any of that until the Tuesday press conference with Brent comes out, or maybe even the Thursday one for all we know, because I still got a whole another week of practice to work with. I know at one point I did accidentally walk past I could peer into the Bobby Dodd while they were practicing once, and there wasn't really much I could pick up on of like who was practicing, who wasn't practicing. They have their own stuff going on, but um, I know a lot of people are concerned about the center, the logo at the middle of the field. They have not started painting the full steam ahead logo again. I don't think we will have the full steam ahead logo in the middle of the field again. Probably for the rest of the season. But and then yeah, 12 p.m. is our kick against Miami, so we'll be in. I mean, we'll be out of there early afternoon. We'll get that. I hate that there's not gonna be like a big tailgate scene for this, which kind of sucks. Isn't this the one that Big Boy's supposed to perform at too, for the hell of a block party?
It might be.
Which seems way
I'm
too
gonna be real
early.
honest, Jack. I love that Hell of a Block Party exists. I love that we block off North Avenue. That's incredible. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But I really like my tailgate.
Your tailgate's good. I'm just saying
You
your
know,
tailgate is fun. It also just seems weird that we might be getting a Big Boy show at like 11:15 in the morning
in the morning,
on
yeah,
North Ave. Like that, this is not computing well. This is not what it should be, but that they didn't have any control over that, so
yeah.
all is that stay. Okay. I think that's all we have for football. On to volleyball, which holy cow, this was a weekend and a half for the girls on Michelle Collier's squad. This was the trip to the Triangle to face Duke and number 25 North Carolina. Yes, a ranked North Carolina volleyball team. That is not normal at all, at least since we've been mostly tracking the team. Uh, Freshman middle blocker Logan Wiley still starting in the place of Larissa Mendez while Liv Mogridge plays right side. Mendez, I don't know if Mendez even traveled for this, honestly, from what I could tell on TV. And then Eloise Suarez still out with an arm injury. So still doing this different form of our lineup. Duke was able to do a pretty good job at stopping us in the middle. UNC less so, but nonetheless, it took two 5-set matches to beat Duke in North Carolina, which Jake, we talked about this before. The ACC has been getting better. I think UNC took a
Yep.
set off of us last year, actually, or a year before. I don't remember, somewhere in there, but against a lot of this current team in the past. And now it's like we're still good. We got the wins. We had to come back from 11-4 to beat Duke in the fifth set, which I'll talk about why that's crazy later. But it this feels like in moments where we're still in that stretch where we have to win every game to be relevant for possibly hosting. We won those games, and it was gritty. And it was tough. Where are you sitting at with this?
Yeah, I I gotta say, UNC really strong this year. Not necessarily not necessarily like surprising. I don't think is the word. They're a program that it's almost been more surprising that between women's basketball, volleyball, and softball, right? Like pretty major women's sports. It's almost surprising that they haven't been as good.
Yeah,
Um,
true, true.
I think about that a decent amount. Like they've been fine at women's basketball, like tournament quality type team, but like. I don't know for how good their women's soccer, their field hockey, the men's basketball, men's baseball. Like
Right.
you'd think that a rising tide lifts all ships, or like a basketball breeds basketball success. And we'll talk about women's basketball in their time, but a quick two quick asides, things that flashed across my mind. Mogridge homecoming. We
Hmm.
did grab the intra-conference transfer from Liv Mogridge. So always an interesting storyline there. And two, we talked before we went on air. We lost a five-setter to them in 2016, the last year that they were really good. I think they won the conference that year. If not, they came in second to Florida State. But if Tech pulls that game out, that 2016 team with the Van Guns twins probably makes the NCAA tournament. Neither here nor there. I normally say that volleyball has particularly um, notable poll inertia. It took Georgia Tech a long time of being pretty good to really good to break
Hmm.
into that top 25. Honestly, they were helped by the pandemic era and the teams
Hmm.
not playing full schedules and,
Yep.
and fully competitive schedules and things like that. This is not the case for UNC. They have been down relative to kind of that mid 2010s peak, but they're a really good team. Even after today, they're still third in the conference in win percentage, looking pretty competitive there. They had a really strong, 8-1 non-con showing. Can't complain about that. Obviously, everyone can always ask questions different ways. Cough, cough, Syracuse about the strength of one's
Oh God.
non-con schedule. We don't have to get into that right now. Totally different can of worms. But yeah, UNC is a really good program. I don't know. This when we were kind of, again, to peer behind the curtain, when we were kind of talking through how we wanted to approach the podcast today with tons of things going on and me being out and stuff, I kind of wanted to play the like incredulous volleyball fan to the Jack's very informed volleyball fan. I don't often get to do that with Georgia Tech in general, but then and we've got some content we'll get into in just a bit. I became a little bit too well researched, I think, to pull that off, Jack. And what I would say is UNC, it seems to be that like there's no shame in kind of how that game played out. It's a competitive team, they're
Yeah.
top 25 team. It's a quality win in their building. Carmichael, right? I was
Yep.
listening
They're in
to it a
Carmichael.
bit on the
Yep.
radio,
Yep.
but I mean Carmichael's a cathedral of sport in general. It's a great place to play. It's a hard place to play. Interesting sight lines there too, with it being a basketball gym
Hmm.
and a little bigger than somewhere they usually play. I think it's a quality win. You want to win every every game 3 set or every match 3 sets to nothing, but you know it's two really interesting venues at the very least, and we can kind of talk maybe a little bit about Duke here in a sec. But does that kind of track with your read on the UNC game at least?
The UNC game for sure. Like they are legit. They should have with the big home court and everything. They should have gotten at least a set off of us, but we didn't
Yeah.
exact. I don't think this was a game where we like clearly lost it for any stretch of time
Mhm.
and just made ourselves look terrible. Like this was a. I mean, UNC hit 600 in the third set. Like they waxed us clean in a couple of those. And then we just figured our stuff out in the third. It was mostly a whoever got out to the hot start first in the set won the sets. There was big
Yeah.
comebacks were not really a thing. Both teams were good enough to stop that kind of stuff. Even if both sides came back at points mid set, that wasn't happening.
Well, you noted that it was a 600 hit attack from them in the third. It really only wound up being, and I say only a 6 point set. Like we've seen a lot more lopsided sets by any teams. Like I
Yes,
think that speaks to maybe Georgia Tech being at least a little bit more like consistent. I took a look at some of the, serve type stuff. It looks like, kind of maybe a little higher air rate than you'd like, but that
that
seems
was
a
the
little
thing.
better.
Yeah,
It seems like the attack was relatively clean in these games. Like it just
yeah.
seemed like a competitive volleyball match,
That's really what.
like
Yeah, that's what. No, that is what it was. It felt like two good teams just going at it like that. There was
yeah.
nothing odd about this, nothing weird about this. This is they. I think this should have been even. Like Tech's ranked 16 in the country right now. You could tell me we should be
Yeah.
22nd, and I wouldn't really fight it either at the same
Yeah.
time right now. And North
Mhm.
Carolina has played now. To North Carolina's credit, they also haven't played the brunts of who they got to play still. Also, they get an easier scheduling format than we do based on where they finished last year. So
Hmm.
they were 10-1 in the ACC coming into this, which was second, I believe, and we were 2 games behind them. Now we're a game behind them at 9. We're at 9-3, and they're at 10-2.
Yep.
So getting a game like this was very critical for, but how we possibly we're not really going to have a shot at winning the conference with considering we got 2 Stanford games and a Pitt game still to go. But nonetheless, it was a big game for normalizing the conference standings a little bit closer to what it probably will be when the season's over. But right
Yeah.
now, they are absolutely the front runner for the sneaky person who gets the automatic sneaky team that gets the automatic bid because of how the scheduling format helps out that second tier team below us right now. So, and they're good enough to take advantage of that right now, which is
Well,
great because we
and
would have said Florida State was that team before the season too.
we will get into some of the sneaky helping and all that. I updated the USI. I don't know. I'm a little bit skeptical of how accurate it's going to be in the world of unbalanced schedules this year.
Fair.
But I think that's something that the data needs to kind of play out a little bit more. But before we get there, I do want to touch just on a thing or two I noticed from the Duke match. Looks like just kind of based on, records coming into the game, vibes, like Duke's held up their end of the bargain at least a little bit in conference play, 5-7 as of right now. Really, 4-7 non-con is a little tough, but I want to circle back around to the point I made about venues. just the fact that they play in Cameron
They
Indoor,
play
I
it. They
feel like
play in
that's
Cameron.
also an interesting effect. You're getting them, in again in their building. Like in terms of the underlying numbers, it seemed like it didn't quite pencil out as well for Georgia Tech. There was no set where looks like we truly dominated either in the attack and the side out in limiting errors. The one thing though that jumped off the page at me, and I feel like we haven't seen it that much this year, is we outblocked Duke. So trying to take a positive from there, and
Yes. And
you've
the
kind of had more of the eyes on the middle blocking situation. Let's talk through that for a second.
we better have because we are the two worst blocking teams in the conference, it turns out. I learned during that game. So if we were going to ever out block anybody, it was literally only going to be the Duke Blue Devils. Very
Good.
similar problems going both ways there. But they were very good about stopping our middle blocking or just their middles in general. This
Mhm.
was the first off Logan Wiley game I'd say we've had in the 6 or 7 that she's played so far. Uh,
Yeah.
she wasn't amazing. Pierce wasn't amazing. It was clear the size wasn't working, so Anna Bosey ended up playing a fair amount down the stretch in that game, which we haven't. She was the fill-in backup middle blocker for Liv Mogridge last year, and she has been passed over by Logan Wiley in that position so far this year. We're also starting to see this thing where in this with this lineup, Laura Fisher will come in late in sets when we're serving off a side out, and she will swap in for Luana Emiliano to have more blocking presence in the middle on those first balls over, basically. And I haven't done any tracking to see how well it actually works or it doesn't work and whatnot. Then I wish there was stats for this, but nonetheless, that's kind of been the mold. There's been a lot of by committee rotations going on here. Pearson and Logan's always at the front, no matter what. Mogridge on right side kind of is acting as a morphing middle blocker right side with Mendez not in there, and then they'll plug in an extra middle blocker with Fisher or Harper if it comes to it, basically. Um, so this game was a much more of a defensive slugfest than a middle blocking slugfest, but that's because the attacks were stopped pretty well on all sides. It felt like a lot like the Virginia game last year when they pushed us to 5 sets in their building, where it's just like, we just need everybody to do something in this game because nothing is working perfectly for both sides. They were taking out our pin hitters so well. That was the big thing. Is like they just Otane had a gazillion swings. I think she may have set her record for total swings. She tied her career high with 27 kills, which she set I think 2 years ago. Uh, both Otane and Emiliano had 2020 double doubles. We've never had a pair
Hmm.
of teammates have a 2020 double double in the same game in program history, and
Hmm.
Tam's got 2 of them now. Chris Omeneski, is that how you say her name? Did I ever say Chris's name? She played in the 90s. She's the only one with 3 in Tech history. So today with one
Yeah.
more long fifth setter might end up tying the Tech's record with that because she had 21 digs, I want to say, in that game. Um,
Whew.
yeah. And then we were
Yeah.
down 11-4 in the 5th set and didn't lose. That's just the nuts part about it is we were just not right in that 5th set whatsoever. And then we got right and pulled it off. I did ask the team about like, hey, is this the biggest 5th set comeback the team's ever had? And they're like, we could find that out, but we have to manually go through many, many papers and box scores on paper from the 80s to confirm this because they just haven't done that detailed record keeping yet. And apparently, I quote, some of these papers are hanging on by a thread right now. So,
Yeah. As somebody who's intimately perused the media guides for like every single score in every
uh,
sport, I can only imagine that having to go to the actual originals would add a level of
yes,
unfunness. Let's put it like that.
yes.
That would,
There
yeah,
was
that's
someone
tough
who,
to beat.
if there was some staffing changes at the athletic association, which happens all the time with lower rung staffers this summer, but that someone was planning on doing this kind of work this past summer, and it just the timing never didn't work out with how staffing went around. So, um, unfor hey, you could blame JBat for this. JBat stopped us from getting this data that we wanted because they understaffed for 2 weeks. That's what it came down to.
Yeah, I mean
So,
that's when you get to do some of these project works is when you don't have
yeah,
to,
right.
run the teams and the sports information, I guess.
On
But
blocking, I noticed this for today's game against North Carolina. We had 3 blocks going into the 5th set. We finished with 6, which just
yeah,
shouldn't be happening. I think we get 1 point, we get like barely a block a set, and we had three in the final set, which kind of is why we won that match. Like that was a huge thing there. We had a couple point lead, we were able to get a couple aces that did a lot to help. So nonetheless, we
Yeah.
are now 17-4, which is one game worse than we were after 21 games last year. I would say this is just as hard of a schedule, if not harder, in terms of ACC play getting to this point. So, in no way, shape, or form am I saying we have. I don't think we have really
It,
regressed right now. I would say our ranking, while it matches about where we were last year, this reflects more just how much better the entire slate of top tier volleyball is right now. So, we got a
it
lot of
is
work to do, though.
also it is also a conference schedule that is both front loaded and back loaded. We've been
Yes.
slogging through the soft underbelly middle of
Mm-hmm.
the schedule, just
And it's
piling
over.
up wins.
It's over
And
now.
it is over.
Well, maybe
I
one
would
more.
not.
Maybe one more,
And
but
yeah, I was gonna say I'll use this as a helpful transition to the Excel rabbit hole that I was sucked into for about an hour before we got on the call here. Um, Tech is making its first trip in I guess any of the sports out to the West Coast.
yes, this will
Visiting
be the first one.
our
Yeah.
friends in Berkeley and Palo Alto. Georgia Tech is not the first program that has gone out to the West Coast. And Jack and I were kind of wondering, how do teams that go out west fare? And Jack,
So far. So far.
my high level thought is that it is too early to tell.
Okay.
Uh, Maybe not because there's been four teams that have made the trip. That gives you what, 8 data points because each one plays 2 games out
Mm,
there. You got Cal and Stanford. It'd be interesting maybe to see how they come this way. But even with 8 data points, I think Stanford A breaks the mold because they are too good.
sure.
Stanford has lost a grand total of 1 set against BC, NC State, Syracuse, Wake, and then their 2 games against Cal. That is a
Okay.
function of Stanford being really good.
Yep.
And also, the corollary to that is the best of those teams that go out there, that have gone out there, is NC State. NC State is currently in the bracket in the USI, which I think is fraudulent.
Yeah, that's not
I
right. That
question
ain't
my
right.
own math and including 10 ACC teams.
Amazing. Amazing.
That is the power of the unbiased or the unbalanced schedule. I do not think that is necessarily something that is accurate. And like I said, they are the best of those teams that have headed out that way. Syracuse is 1-11 in conference. We alluded to that a little bit
Mhm.
earlier. Wake is 5-7, and BC is 4-8. BC and Wake, notably, they have won at Cal. That said, Cal has only won 2 conference games. They're both at home. They
Mm,
have not won any road games yet. Stanford has only, I should say they've only lost on the road, but not all their road games are losses. So they're
gotcha.
undefeated at Maples Pavilion. I don't know. I'll have to know when we actually play there in a couple of days.
Yeah.
Um, no, the fact of the matter is Cal can only win at home. Stanford, their only conference losses have come on the road. But then again, they've both played at Louisville. Cal, good luck going to the L&N Federal
Right.
Credit Center.
Mm-hmm.
They played Stanford, Louisville, and the Yum Center. Those are tough road games, and
Yep.
you know whether that maybe applies to say if they've visited. I don't think they've visited Wake, but that's a little bit different of a context. But it is certainly worth noting. I'll bring it back around real quick. Um, None of those teams are, I would say, seriously move the needle there. But I will add that Georgia Tech Stanford is by far the most significant West Coast ACC volleyball game that will have happened yet.
Yes,
I
that is
think
true.
in a week or two we'll have a couple more data points like that, and that'll kind of give us more directionality,
Right.
if you will.
Yeah. I am very glad they are doing the Cal game first, just merely because I assume we're going
Uh-huh.
to fly out Thursday. I
Hmm.
mean, these athletes are never having to do a 3 hour time shift the day before a game, pretty much ever. The only one I can think of is when Nicole Fegan had to run at Eugene for NCAA track championships. Like that is the only time the recent one only recent one I can think of. Uh, so
Oh, I
you got one? When did we play
I
out
do.
west?
It's a volleyball one. We played
Since
at the
then,
Pyramid, the Long Beach Pyramid. I think we played Long Beach and
Nicole
UCLA.
was Nicole was more
That was a
recent
tough
than that.
game.
Nicole was more
That
recent
was
than that day.
Jack, I feel so old.
I know.
I think that was 2021 that happened. But anywho,
Anyways, well,
yeah,
to get your point, but nonetheless,
yeah,
also a little bit different situation with this Long Beach stuff where that's usually early season. Like you kind of just can
yes,
adjust. This is
yep,
we are in crunch time academically. This is like the one little spot before all the hell weeks crammed together before finals and stuff like that. Like this is a November at Tech is crunch time until you get to Thanksgiving. And so add that.
you.
Yes.
I was gonna say, it's that time of year because I just had one of my like quarterly, oh gosh, I've missed a midterm or something
Oh
like
no.
that type nightmares like last week. So no, no, if you're
It's
currently in
amazing
school,
what the
no,
body
those
remembers.
don't fade,
It's amazing what the body remembers.
Yeah.
But so yeah, this is I remember when I talked with Jen Yi about this last what was it earlier this year about like what's the travel going to be like. She's like, there is no way this is good for any of them, and we've kind of seen it with the Big Ten football schools. Like
Yeah.
USC has been awful on the road. UCLA not good on the road. Um, Granted, still different and whatnot, but nonetheless, we'll be very curious how this chart we made pans out once we see how maybe this is a thing maybe this will be a thing we post after the season's over. It's just like what did it look like for all the teams that went
Yeah.
out to California when it was all said and done. But
Yeah, I'm
nonetheless,
I'm I'm interested to see some maybe more high quality matchups, and also just kind of digging in on Cal and Stanford coming to the East Coast, which I think is the corollary to that. I
yeah,
didn't look at any of their specific matchups there, but maybe saying, hey, like obviously we know they played at Louisville. Obviously we know that Stanford's losses in conference have only come on the road, but that's something that's certainly a valid hole to dive down a little bit deeper on.
right, yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, so on Friday we play at Cal, 10 o'clock Eastern time, 7 o'clock local. On Sunday, was it Sunday? Is it Sunday we play? Yeah, I believe it's Sunday we play against Stanford. Or is it Saturday? Oh, no, it's Saturday. That's right, because
I
they
was gonna
fly
say
back Sunday.
I think it's Saturday.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
then they fly back Sunday. So this will be a rare back-to-back game situation. I just realized if I stay up for the volleyball game, my day will be uh precariously long, assuming I go to rec parade at whatever early o'clock that thing starts at. So that'll be fun. I did just pull up Cal's schedule just for the heck of it and see where they went. A lot of West Coast stuff for non-con for the most part,
Yep.
but they have gone to Kentucky, they have gone to Indiana. They lost both those
Hmm.
matches, and then they have gone to Pittsburgh, lost that match, went to Dallas, different, but SMU is also good, lost to SMU, lost,
LA, Louisville too.
and then got swept by both Florida State and Miami in Florida. So
Yeah. Hmm.
so far, not great for them, but also talent, things like that. Yada yada. So
Yeah.
they will.
We weren't really expecting them to make a splash there. Real
No.
quick, right? I know we're trying to move along. I did say USI has 10 in. I think that's too high. I think Miami, NC State, Florida State, and Virginia is robust to
Mhm.
assume that all four of those would make it in, but
Fair. Yeah.
certainly a top 16 level SMU, Stanford, Louisville, and Pitt would make a lot of sense for honestly diverse regional hosts
Yeah.
in that mix. Georgia Tech, North Carolina, top 25 teams as well. Virginia at 30 and Florida State at 31. I think that all kind of pencils out with our logic there. It'll be really interesting to see how this unfolds and also a big Big Ten that currently sitting with 11 bids, SEC with 8, Big 12 with 6, and then the Big East and Summit both with 2. I think it probably pencils out that there's more than 6 multi-bid leagues at the expense of those Big Ten, ACC, and SEC teams. But
Right.
yeah, interesting world. This is unprecedented for the athletes. It's unprecedented for your bracketologists and your
Hmm.
college football playoffs, and that's 12 teams now too, and all that. So I don't know, makes for interesting chatter at least.
Yes, it does. All right, let's move on. We got a couple of the other non-rev sports here. Cross country finished their ACC championships out in Cary, North Carolina. Both finished 12th, which how many teams do this in the ACC? Is it 12 or is it I assume all of them do
Uh,
this.
no, I think almost all, if not all. So
Okay.
it's
Okay.
probably a 17, 18 type
Gotcha.
situation,
Okay.
which, me seeing 12 and thinking last year where it's 15, maybe it's a little bit better than that, but that, still
Yeah,
still a bottom half finish.
not amazing. Not amazing, but nonetheless,
Yeah.
we know cross country has not really been our strength since Nicole left, so we'll just I guess that's what they got. They got NCAA South Regionals in Tallahassee next. So we'll see if anyone can make the leap out of there to the bigger NCAA meets. Golf had we had actually talked about this East Lake Cup. I think one of our just normal favorite events as purveyors of everything tech sports. The very small event that is televised out at Eastlake. Tech was first in stroke play amongst the four squads, and then beat Ohio State in the semis and lost to Auburn in the final. This was the end of their fall slate, Jake. I mean, while this is a four-team event, it is still a good four teams that always have to play at this, and we get some very nice match play practice at the same time, which is a thing
Yeah.
we've been good at for the last couple of years, quite honestly, between the last two NCAA championship runs. But nonetheless, still good to see. Good to see us just sweep a team too, like we did with these. I
Yeah.
just like seeing that in general.
I was gonna say I feel like if you only tuned in for that finale championship against Florida match, you might go like, Georgia Tech, they didn't win the big one, da, da, da. But that was an overperformance, I would argue, to
Yes,
get to that position.
and then we got our way
So
to the semis again. So like we definitely done really well in that
yeah,
context.
yeah, and I think that playing really meaningful golf is helpful. And honestly, I know this sounds a little lame. TV runs a lot of things, but match play just translates so much better to a television
Oh my
drama.
God, yes, yes,
I'm a
yes.
I'm a huge fan of the collegiate, and right, that there are other formats, but the collegiate golf, like the semis, quarters,
Hmm.
finales
Hmm.
type stuff, and the ACC match play too. Like I don't know.
It's good
Granted,
television.
I've been playing golf for a couple of years now, but like as like hobby wise, but I didn't grow up with it.
Hmm.
I think it's almost one of my favorite things to watch in a given
Oh yeah.
sports
Oh yeah.
calendar.
No, it is when it's Ryder Cup time. I kind of don't care what else is going on in the world. I just lose myself to that tournament. So I get what you mean. And
Yep.
I've only watched four or five of those in my life, but they're just amazing when they do actually happen. So imagine if the
Yep.
Masters was which match play. You got one on. I mean, it kind of basically is once you get to Sunday, but just like you got one on one down the last four holes. It's crazy. Anyways, uh,
Yeah.
swimming. They did. They've continued their pretty good winning ways, especially on the guys' side. They're now 17th in the latest poll update, which is in that like fringe below the top powerhouses in NCAA swimming. We mentioned before. There's really a mass. There is a the best teams that basically could be Olympic teams, and then everybody else.
Yeah.
We are in the everybody else, but in the better part of the everybody else. So what happened in Florida State this week?
I was going to say Pitt, Florida State was a
Pitt,
couple
sorry,
weeks ago.
right, right.
So on that point, the women are not ranked. The men are 17th. Those top eight teams, top 6 to 10 teams in a given year, there, let's be real. There's no chance
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
dethrone any of those. There's no March Madness in swimming. But that being said, Tech getting more ACC regular season meets. I am always a fan of. Feels like we don't get too many of those. They went up to Pitt for a 2-day dual meet. I would say the big news, of course, the men did win. I would say relatively convincingly, pretty solid there. The women, much like Florida State, didn't lose by much. It's not a win, but I'd say a pretty solid showing. I don't usually sugarcoat too much there, but I think that's a pretty decent-ish spot to be in there. That being said, the men, big top line news. Mert Kilavus has the Pitt pool record in the 1,000 free,
Hey.
which is wonderful. I like that they're doing the 2-day dual meets. One of the tough parts about a normal dual meet is you don't necessarily get all the events that one would swim in
Hmm. Right,
in
right.
an invite format or something like that. So, going up there for 2 days, gets all the relays in the mix. It gets the 1,000 and the 500 in the mix, et cetera, et cetera. You know, Mert Kilavus, Berke Saka being able to swim the 100 and the 200 back. I mean, that happens at normal meet, but you know
Hmm.
what I mean? Get some freshness in there too. Those were all wins for those two gents right there across those four events. We had a couple other wins, 3 meter diving. Really good. Max Fowler and Ada Bradescu both won that. Antonio Romero, Stephen Jones won fly events themselves. And then Sophie Murphy, Sabine Brisson won the 100 and 200 free and 100 and 200 breast, respectively. And then you also had wins from Zora Rybkova and Kendall Chun in the 200 fly and 400 IM. All that to say, on top of two relays, pretty good showing. I'm pretty pleased to see these results. I think it's exciting. It bodes well for some of the future. And I don't know, just gotta put your head down and get some qualifying times across the board in the
Right.
Tech Invite, which is coming up for the midseason break. That'll be around Thanksgiving time here.
Not gonna lie, they are dangerously close to becoming the what we're trying to say, just comeback team of the year, just in general.
Yeah.
on all fronts here. Like we know the women's team has not been at the same level as the guys team, and but both teams have just not shown up at the big meets when they have gotten
Yeah.
someone there. So seeing this now is very, very promising. Yeah, I very much assume Mert, Burke, Sabine, Sophie. I mean, heck, who knows what happens in diving? We might be competitive in diving nationally, which is
I was gonna say,
this might.
remembering back to like 2 years ago, getting only diving points for the women and finishing with a number next to your name, and that's the thing about being number 17 in a regular season poll. You could always not score at NCAA's just on how
Yeah,
it works out. So
yeah,
that's the goal. Score at NCAA's,
yes,
get a
yes.
little number next to your name.
I would love that. Absolutely love that. Okay. So yes, they next swim at the Tech Invite from the 22nd to the 24th of this month before Thanksgiving. Club hockey did play. They lost 6-2 to Ole Miss. I'm not going to belabor that. I mean, it's just club sports. But this has not been their year. So hopefully they get off the schneid at some point here. Quickly
Yep.
to finish with women's basketball. They start tomorrow. Literally tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. They play Winthrop. The season starts tomorrow, and I have just been late to the game on them, but I'm glad it's here. They have a full-fledged recruiting class from the state of Georgia. There are no Spanish players on this squad that have been recruited this year. The trend's gone. They are fully hammering home the recruiting the Georgia athletes and going from the backyard, which is kind of how the whole school has changed in general with all those recruiting methods too, I would say.
I got thoughts on that. That is not the time. We are trying to be direct with these points, but we can talk about the in-state, out-of-state thing maybe in next summer.
Well, good
Probably
thing
a better
is,
time for that. But
but yeah, that might be. We'll talk about that at some point. I just want to get any thoughts you have about this team before we go into my interview with Blanche Alverson, which will cover basically all the freshmen, all the stuff about this year.
yeah, I don't want to say that anyone anywhere is on the hot seat. That's probably a little bit too much,
I don't think
but
we're there yet. No.
we've kind of hand waved away some results in recent years. I'm ready to be done hand waving. Is that a fair way to put that?
I think that's a great way to put it, and that's how I talked about it with Blanche as well. It's just like this, the first 2 years were let's get the training wheels done, let's figure this out. But now is actually like, okay, you're upperclassmen, let's see this pay off now. And they're thinking the same thing. It seems like with coming into this year, they got better last year with that group of sophomores Blackshear's a year older than them, but with Noguero, with Dunn, with Tony, and with who am I forgetting? Uh, anyways, all of them. They did get better last year, and they've got a lot of the same. Pretty much everyone that was relevant from last year is back this year, which in general is a good sign. Age and maturity is a good thing in college basketball to have, and they definitely have more of it than before. You could tell very plainly they were a young basketball team these last 2 years, and we're
Yeah.
playing some really, really good other ACC teams. So that just bit them in the butt, and I think they're
It seemed like no matter who they were playing, they were missing some parts, if that
yes.
makes sense. Like it was almost
Yes.
they were incomplete in a lot of ways. I'm very eager to see how some of that growth pans out, though.
Yes. I'll just make a note. I don't know if you had remembered this, but we got Zoe Smith from Georgia, who is a forward who basically beat the crap out of us on the boards every single time we played her, and now we just have her. So I think we're going to be better when it comes to rebounding. I assume she's going to start in that forward center position that where Aisha Wanera started last year, which made some notes about it. Was not my favorite thing that they ever did, but they didn't really have many other options at
Yeah,
the time. But
good way to put it.
between her and Ari Termis, I think this will be better. It feels like they just have the pieces they need with none of the chaff. Like they just got the 12 girls that they need to be good and to carry them into the next generation. So with that, let's go into or at least my interview with Blanche Alverson.
Blanche, we're at year 3 now of the Naguero, Dunn, Morgan, Blackshear, that whole group, and now upperclassmen. They clearly made a step up last year, which I thought was obviously great to see, both in record and just raw performance as well. Now that they're at this stage in their careers and also as a unit together, do their marching orders change at all? Especially knowing that they've got a very highly touted freshman group under them. Like, what is their base expectations different from what it would have been last year?
Yeah, I think with that group they have a lot of experience, and so we want, we require a lot of leadership out of them and kind of setting the tone and leading the way of kind of leading that group, because they are super talented and they push our young group pushes our older group, and that's what you want, and I think that's the best thing, the best combination. But we do expect a little more out of them in terms of their experience and kind of their ability to handle adversity and different things like that, and their maturity when it comes to their games, and just kind of how they have a lot of, a lot of tough times under their belt, some great times under their belt. So I think, really relying on them in that regard is definitely what we ask them to do.
Are there particular things at this stage in a college player's career that you tend to focus on as a coach versus what you would have focused on when they were freshmen and sophomores?
I think just more for each of them individually is their development. They're all kind of at different stages in their development. And what do we expect? They're different roles. I think at this point, though, like we really, whatever they bring to the table is what we expect all the time. Consistency, I think, is the main thing we talked to them about is, now you do have those 2 years under your belt. Now we're, let's be who we are and be consistent with that. And then really, we do have the expectation that you continue to handle your business and also kind of elevate and bring the others along as well. But having a mature group and an experienced group is great, and I think that's what we really feel like we finally have that after a couple years. So it's
yeah. And I imagine that's just kind of it's a lot of this team's been building to the year like this, or possibly next year as well. Once they're all seniors, like we knew what the future could look like a couple years ago when we first saw Tony splash, and we saw it's like, okay, she can make threes, and then she got her defense to a step up next year. Now it's like, okay, does it feel like now is like okay, let's actually do the thing we've been planning on for the last couple of years?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think we, this is what we talk about. This is what we've been preparing for, right? This is the moment we're looking for them, is to take that you've learned a ton, right, and then kind of come with that confidence and a different mentality into this season. Like, this is what we've been looking forward to. Now let's go do it.
Right. That makes sense. I'm very excited to see what this version looks like, and just the more grown up version, I guess, to put it one way. I want to ask about Zoe Smith, because the last couple of years you've brought in a fifth-year transfer point guard. She's also a forward, but that has been also from Georgia. In this case, is from Georgia and from Georgia. Now that she actually came from UGA. For this slot, like this roster spot, was it the plan to always pull in another experienced guard like her, as y'all done the last couple of years, or was this position more up in the air, knowing you had more experience to work with coming from your core group?
Yeah, we definitely know, in terms of where we were the last couple of years, we knew we needed to add somebody with her athletic ability and her, her defensive mindset and her rebounding and her ability to run the floor. Those are definitely things that we wanted in that position. So she really fit the mold, especially being from the state of Georgia. We're very familiar with her, playing her every year for the last, since her entire career at UGA. And she always played pretty well against us, and so we had a really good idea for kind of what she was going to be capable of, and it really fit what we needed. And so when she became available, that was somebody we definitely kind of identified early and said, she is who we've been looking for out of this position. So it was definitely intentional. And knowing we had a group of experienced players, bringing her in, kind of helping us in that post, giving more experience with that post, with Kayla Blackshear and Ari Termis and DeAsia. Like these are, it's a really really good, solid, good size, a lot of rebounding ability out of that crew. So she continues to elevate that.
It seems like she can be a much better complement as a newbie than possibly the last two transfers have been, just because, like, okay, there's the established roles for everybody and knowing how everyone plays, so she can do more of a plug and player thing versus what Cam and Bianca and all the past ones were able to do.
And I think too, she fits in terms of, like, not only, it's just one person coming into an already established culture. And I think that's been the biggest thing that we as a group feel really good, as our culture has been established now. We've had the same core group for the last 2 years going into year 3. It's been a really nice, tight knit group, and adding just one person into that, we've been building in a way. And like you said earlier, like, this is kind of what we've been waiting for. It just is a process, right? And like trusting the process. And I think that's one of the things we've really tried to be process driven. So then we just, we love recruiting out of high school and then continuing to add in pieces as we go for certain needs. I think we did it a few years ago as well. We had Digna Stratmana come into she was one particular piece added to an already experienced group. And I think that, meshing that is a lot easier when you already have that established culture.
That makes sense. I've not thought of Stratman in a long time, but she was easily on my. I love that. I love when she was playing. She felt I saying she's Kevin Durant isn't obviously a perfect comp. I was like, I see what's going on here. Like,
Right.
tall person who can shoot and do a little bit of everything was great.
Okay.
You mentioned the freshman. I want to spend most of the time on this because this is of the most well-regarded recruiting classes y'all have had in a while here, and all from Georgia, which I love how that's not just with y'all, but just across the institute is becoming more of the trend. Like we got Logan Wiley for volleyball. Men's golf can pull Georgia people. Football is pulling more Georgia people. Like every softball is very much a Georgia-based sport right now too. So like I love y'all following this trend too. I was thinking we just go through each one. You just let me know what to expect from them, what they can do this year, or what they will bring to the table down the line. Chit chat, right? Obviously, all first team, all first name person. With how perfect it will be to say that name and type that name out all the time. But what's she got to bring to the table?
Yeah, chit chat, I mean, I think to go back kind of on your point about it being a Georgia class, and that was something that Nell, when we first got here, wanted to really go after and strive to recruit our state and recruit our area. We want to build this, and we want to have great, we want a huge fan base, and we want to be able to market our players here. And what better to do it with players that are from Georgia, staying here, most of them right around this Atlanta area. And we've seen it already in some of our open practices and our scrimmages, right? They have followings. They're all very talented, and had really successful high school careers. And so it's going to be a fun group to follow. And then individually just, chit chat. Yeah. You mentioned an all name. She is, I mean, and she is somebody that when we first got here, when she was in high school, her high school coaches, different coaches in the area was like, Chit Chat Right is a name you need to know. And so we really, started kind of watching her as she was younger and develop, and she just blew us away. Because the more you study her, the more you watch her, she plays bigger than her size. Her IQ is off the charts. She's a phenomenal point guard. She has great vision. She has this calmness about her where she doesn't get rattled. And I think, what we see is her just steadily continue to work and get better and get better and get better. And she really does a great job. She did a great job coming in as a fresh in summer workouts, and then headed into fall. She's super consistent. So we're really excited about the future for her. It's going to be really bright.
You mentioned outplaying her size. I didn't realize until today that she's listed at 5'4", which I was like, okay, that's about how tall I am. And I feel scared even walking on a basketball court knowing against normal dudes. So that's good to know that she can outplay her coverage in that kind of regard as well. Danny Carnegie, top 30 ESPN. I mean, all these are 4 stars, great players, but what's Danny got?
Yeah, Danny, Danny's been a scorer, right? Danny, that's who Danny is. And I think what is awesome about Danny is she wants to be great and, wants to put the work in to be great. And she's somebody who can impact, she can rebound. She's a nice size guard. She can do a multitude of things. And, she's right, super high level, really, I think played her way into, championship games and really kind of worked her way steadily up in those high school rankings. Not that rankings matter a whole lot, but she proved a lot of people that she was good enough, and kind of earned that. And she's earned everything she's gotten this point, to her credit. And so she's come in and, really just a cool, great personality, and really good vibe about her. I heard somebody compare her to like a James Harden, very similar, kind of plays at her own pace in a good way. Right. And
right. Yeah.
And I think that she's been really, she's brought a really nice balance this whole freshman class, but she's super talented and can really score the ball, and so she's continued to add pieces to her game throughout this off season as well. So really excited for her too.
It sounds like a tech student, just has their own vibe, has their beat they have to march to and have throughout their whole life. So I love how you framed it that way. Yeah. Gabby Grooms, AJC Player of the Year 3 times in a row, which sounds incredible considering the state's not exactly small, but I assume was high on y'all's radar going in, considering she already had the praise going in.
Yeah, and Gabby was actually the first one of that class to commit, and I think that says a lot about her and who she is, and why Georgia Tech is going to be special to her also, and for her, for us. I mean, she's a phenomenal person, super talented, has always been real, like had a great career in high school, can really score the ball. Again, somebody who has a long line of tradition in her family, similar to Kara Dunn's mom, Lady Grooms, played at the University of Georgia, played at the WNBA. She actually wears her mom's number.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so that's why she wears the number 27. And so that's unusual this year because they can start adding different numbers. So she's our first one.
Right, that's true.
Yeah. Outside. So she's so unique. It's almost like perfect. She's the first one to commit. She was the first person with a different number. She's also very unique in her personality, and we really love Gabby and love what she brings to the table. And she's just constantly working really hard. and I think that is a big part of well-rounding that class in terms of our personality and in that group. So really, she's done a phenomenal job of continuing just to like trust her process and keep pushing.
And then finishing with Tiana Thompson, who, as you mentioned before, like trying to establish the backyard recruiting path. Like you get of the best that was available in Georgia coming out of high school this year. So I imagine getting Tiana had to have been like okay, proof that what y'all are trying to do is truly actually working quickly also.
Yeah. And Tiana was somebody too that we identified really early, recruited her, young in high school, and a good standing tradition. I think is really when you're at Georgia Tech, there's a lot more people in this area that went to Georgia Tech and have a lot of Georgia Tech ties, and that's something that we really pride ourselves on. And her dad, Rich, came to Georgia Tech, and they have a strong tradition here. He was on the track, he high jumped and was a jumper on the track team here, and phenomenal. And so I think for us, again, establishing that relationship with Tiana and her family at an early age was really, really important for that. And she had a great night last night in her exhibition game. She has is going to have this ability to really impact the ball on the defensive side of the ball. She can really score. All of them can score. All of them are really great scorers and playmakers in high school. And Tiana has just her length and her scrappiness, and she's going to be able to affect the ball a lot on the defensive end. And that's, I think, what some people are going to notice about her coming out is really her ability and her tenacity to play both sides of the ball is something that we're really excited for her for.
That's awesome. I mean, I was just realizing what you're talking. I was like, wait a second, there's no Spanish people here. I was used to always having to get used to a new name that I never heard before. I was like, no, these are all. I know.
I think we've kind of come up with this nice little balance, right? Of every couple years, bringing in a player from anywhere really. But I think for us being homegrown, we've said that a lot within our program. I think we have 7 players from Georgia, 6 or 7 players from Georgia right now. And that was important, Zoe being from Georgia, Kara being from Georgia, and then this class. So we're really excited about that. And I think it adds a different kind of excitement, I think, just around our program, some familiarity with our local organizations and high schools as well.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. You talk about, you're talking about the culture before. At this point, now that you've had this version of y'all now for year 3, does it feel easier to dive into y'all's strengths, just knowing what you are, and is it easier to pull in people, or is for the folks that are new to the team, is it easier for them to blend in now that you know what you're dealing with beforehand when they come in?
Yeah, I think with every year is different, right? And like we obviously know individual strengths and weaknesses and different things like that, but I think what's really cool and what we're still in this process of is figuring out who we really are, figuring out who there are opportunities for this. We're playing a much faster pace this year. We're doing different things this year, right? So I think, finding people's strengths and weaknesses when we have a lot more strengths this year than we've ever had. We have a lot more depth, a lot more, so I think it's all of us, right, trying to figure that balance out. But that's the fun part about it. That's why we coach, and that's why we have our part of it. Each year is different. And your role from year to year can change. And I think for us, we've really, our culture is so good and our chemistry is so good that at the end of the day, we have one common goal, and that's to come out and be together and play and do our best to win basketball games. And I think that's where I feel like we feel as a staff, like our team is going in that direction. We just got to keep going in that direction.
You mentioned the pace. So my next question was going to be like, is there a part about your team or a player on the team that's been the most surprising development in the offseason that maybe exceeded expectations that you weren't seeing coming perchance?
No, I wouldn't say necessarily that you didn't see coming, but I do think that all of them put so much time in the offseason. One in particular, Ari Termis. I think we're going to see a big jump from her freshman to her sophomore year. Deasia Thomas, big jumps. I think that they put a ton of time in the offseason in their games and development, just that development from year 1 to year 2 as post players. And I think we'll see a lot. I think everybody can look forward to seeing a lot of different things from them too, because our both of them, the level of work in which that they've put in, and you'll see it right in their games and on the court. And I think that's really exciting to watch. Is this year it's going to be a fun year. So the goal is to get up and play fast and to just to get after it on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, I think for those that have watched, this will be the year. Yeah, seeing the payoff, I think, will be a big welcome sight, and hopefully with the local people, will get more people in the building too, because it'll be easier to see more Georgians play, which I think is a big. We are the Georgia Institute of Technology,
yeah,
not
exactly.
the Atlanta Institute of Technology. So yeah, no, I'm glad things are headed in this direction. Before we go, we were talking how I'm wearing a WNBA jersey before. This was a big year for the league? Was there any part of the year that was your favorite? I mean, the storylines were all over the place because of the new rookies and whatnot. But did something catch your eye that was like, okay, this was the best part for me to watch this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think just overall the excitement around the league, the excitement around games. We actually went to the Fever versus Atlanta game here at
Nice.
Farm, seeing it sell out, right? It's just phenomenal to see the amount of support for women's basketball across the country, across the world now, and I think it's a really cool time. You see the finals. I mean, the finals were phenomenal to watch with the Liberty and the Lynx, and you see different storylines, and you're starting to learn more about players and see different things and you got superstars, but you also we're seeing the coverage has been so much better too. And
Right.
I think it's just there's some really good basketball out there, right? And I think I'm really glad that everybody's starting to see a little bit of that. You got some new teams coming into the league, and the bet because it starts there. Those are the best players in the world, and it's
Yeah.
not just one play. It's not just one player. It's the entire league, and so it's always good for us to be able to support Lorella Kubai with the Atlanta Dream also. So
Mhm.
glad she's still, that was really cool to see and kind of her development and growth this year also in the league.
Yeah. No, it's nice to see that she's kicking it still. Francesca's still kicking it. Lodamai's still kicking it. It's good to see them all thriving post
Right,
tech, especially.
Nerea's playing in Spain. Digno's
Oh,
playing.
nice, great.
So I mean, they're definitely going, and we have players all over playing, which is awesome, right? That we've had the opportunity to coach. So really excited for them.
Awesome, sounds good. Well, season starts next week. I will be there as much as I can be.
Awesome.
Blanche Alverson, thanks for hanging out.
Yeah,
I think
good to see
it's gonna
you.
be a good. I think it's gonna be a good year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Jake, close us out.
As ever, thank you for joining us tonight on Scions of the Southland. Wow, Jack, I'm rusty. You take 2 weeks off and you don't roll right into it. But as always, you can find us at fromtherumbleseat.com. You can find us via email. Email us your thoughts. We love to hear from you about what you want to hear about from therumbleseat@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at FTRSblog. At JakeGrant98 is where you can find me. Jack is at Jack Nicholas. You can find Section 103 there as well at Section 103, section103.com, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at From the Rumble Seat, and podcasts wherever fine podcasts are distributed. Tell your friends. We do appreciate it. The best way to, get somebody interested in what we're doing here is word of mouth. And we know, we want to hear from you. If you're telling people where to find us, interact with us at any of those places. Always happy to hear it. In the meantime, thanks again to Rob and Will for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week. Good night, good luck, and go Jackets.